Hello again. My name is Ty Crump, and in this video, I will be going over my background. Um, Essentially, what caused me to fall away from my Christian upbringing, and essentially just how I was raised. All of these videos are going to be just, shooting from the hip, not really scripted or anything. And I want to preface, since this is my first video, I want to preface everything with when I fell away from my Southern Baptist roots. I was a child. I am 32 years old now. I started falling away around 16, I was an angsty teen. I had opinions that I thought was right, or opinions that I thought were right. And yeah, I thought I knew it all, but had zero life experience, had zero wisdom. I had nothing. But logically, I thought I had it. I was a pretty smart kid. I just had no real world knowledge. So we'll get into it. I was raised Southern Baptist for the most part. The way my family worked, I lived with my mom. My parents separated when I was like 1. But I lived with my mom, and the religious person in our household was my mom's dad, so my maternal grandfather. And basically, growing up, we just followed him from church to church. He initially went to the First Baptist Church in my hometown, and we went there. It was your normal, go to Sunday school, go to actual church service, and you sing a few hymns, and then the preacher gets up and says his, sermon. And then at the end, he would invite everyone up to the altar to, if they feel called to ask forgiveness, and it's a very Protestant or Baptist thing, I guess. I've been to a few Baptist churches, and it's all kind of the same. But they would call everyone up to the altar who feels drawn to, ask for forgiveness, and you'd have your people that went up there every week and cried and, kneeled at the altar. It wasn't really an altar. It was a podium on a stage. And, you had people that would do that every week. You had some random people that would do that. But you get the sense that it's an emotional thing. People were crying and, just very emotionally involved in the experience, and that's all I knew. It was essentially the Protestant standard to give your sermon, ask if anyone wants to be forgiven of their sins or admit that they're a sinner. Not to anyone in particular, just admit that they are. And then, there wasn't like a course or anything. You just get baptized afterwards. You talk to the preacher guy, and you'll schedule a time for one Sunday for him to dunk you in the water, and then you get, that's all it takes. And we went to that church for most of my childhood. I'll say about half. And there was the typical people sat in their specific seats that they've acquired from going there for years at a time. There were cliques. There were these people associated with those people, and, that and the other. And mostly the sermons were around some sort of Bible study about what the Bible actually means. And Sunday school was essentially the same thing. And there may be external citations or resources every once in a while, But usually it was just a, how do you feel? Like the preacher would give his spiel on how he thinks it is to go, and it would be chalked up as, well, God put this on my heart. After, I guess, I don't really know what happened because I was younger. After a certain amount of time, we moved to a non-denominational church in the same town, and it was very small. It was there on Main Street, and it was very similar in the style. The preacher, however, was much more fire and brimstone, would be, red-faced and screaming and all that, to the point that it would, like, scare children, right? But we went there and continued to go there for a while. And that was really the only difference. And then we ended up going to a church. The style's called a cowboy church, and think of like your stereotypical cowboy type, like hats, boots, jeans, all that, and then throw that in a building, and then we're gonna say that we're there for God. That church was completely different than the other churches, and it was, the whole theme, the whole hook of it all was come as you are, right? So people would come and wear their hats indoors. They would, have muddy boots or, whatever, and come in overalls and all. And that was the thing. It was a bunch of country people who liked the country lifestyle, who participated in the cowboy or ranch lifestyle, and, you'd go there. They had things called play days where the church would get together and have like a mock rodeo type thing with different events, and you'd even win like buckles and things like that. But essentially they would try to equate the Bible, not equate the Bible, but use cowboy-like examples to teach the Bible. And it was still a Protestant, Christian type thing where you ask to be forgiven, you admit that you are a sinner, and then get baptized and you're done. I was actually baptized in the First Baptist Church as a younger kid, and then got baptized again, which I know now is, blasphemous or whatever. I was baptized again in the cowboy church, and I was actually baptized in a horse watering trough. Like that was the theme of it all, That church was interesting. It was good. There were nice people. There were nice people in all of them. But it seems that there were differences in opinion for, what was appropriate for the preacher to do and not to do. And my grandfather didn't like it, and so he left the church, right there. And it was different things like, should people drink? Should people not drink? Should they have dances in the church building? And things like that. And my grandfather was very into this church. He was like a founding member, who got together with a bunch of other people, and they were actually, originally they were having church in a horse auction building until they earned enough money to build their own specific building for the church. And he was one of the founding members, and he had disagreements with what was going on in the church because he felt that it was wrong, and he ended up leaving that church, even as a founding member. My mom, who I went to church with, wherever, because she was my mom, was kind of... She went to the church because she liked the idea of it, and she liked the theme of it and all that. And, that's where we stayed for a while. My grandfather kind of went off to do his own study, and eventually became what would be considered like a Messianic Jew type religion, where he tried to, that might be the wrong term, but essentially he tries to partake in the feast days and the events of the Jewish tradition while still believing in Christ, so Jesus as the Messiah. And that's kind of where he is now. He has a Bible study group where they study like the Hebrew culture and the Torah and all that, and it's really focused on that, it seems. My mother, we left the church and just didn't really go to church for like a long time. We were kind of in limbo there, you know. And then now she is going back to a different cowboy church, just to put it in present day perspective. And of course I am pursuing acceptance and whatnot into the Catholic faith, going through OCIA. Anyway, to get back into, like, now that you know essentially the different churches I went to get to where I am now, the real rift that I had as a teenager was I had questions. Like, I was and still am very analytical in my pursuit of truth, pursuit of faith, things like that. Like, I had questions about, you know, like, why did God make people? And if he knows past, present, and future, why did he make Adam and Eve knowing that they would sin only to damn them to hell? And, you know, the typical atheist questions. You know, I watched atheist podcast. I watched all these things that really fueled my sense of like, this doesn't make sense. So I asked those questions. I asked those questions to my mom, who is not super. She has a lot of faith. Like, she just believes to believe, but she doesn't have a very deep knowledge to answer these analytical questions that I was asking, you know. And she did the best that she could with the information she had. And talking to my grandpa at the time, he didn't answer the questions in a way that was sufficient to what I needed for it. So I would ask him things about the Bible that didn't make sense, like, why did God kill all these people? Why did God do this? Why did that? Why did that? You know, it was just a bunch of analytical questions. I actually wrote down like pages of, well, Satan killed 7 people after, you know, God allowed it to happen, and God killed millions of people. How is God the good guy, you know? And all these things that, to me, in my atheist influenced teenaged angst mind, I was like, this doesn't make sense and you can't answer it, you know? So I was very upset, well, that's just dumb. Like, why do you continue to believe this, right? Because in that time, I was told faith equals belief. You just have to believe in, there's a guy weed eating outside or something. You just have to believe in Jesus. Well, to me, he's still blowing the leaf blower. Do your job, man. Good on you. To believe in something, to me, you can't, like, as much as I want to believe, like, you know, the sky is purple or whatever, or the sky is red. Like, I cannot force myself to believe that because I know what blue is. So the sky is blue, right? As much as I want to believe 2 + 2 = fish, it just logically doesn't make sense, right? So I couldn't just force myself to believe, but that is what I was told growing up. So I just shunned it. I was like, that doesn't make sense. There's no way that I can physically or mentally or whatever make myself believe. So it's just wrong. This is not truth. This is people hoping for a good thing, right? So faith equaled belief at that time, which I know not to be the case now, but at that time it was faith equaled belief. And then this was also fueled by a very shallow understanding of the Bible and the religion as a whole, like Christianity as a whole. So, like, the Bible was treated as this, it was living water, right? They call it living water, to where You just flip it open and read, and whatever you read is what you need. God gave you what you needed when you read it. Doesn't matter what you read, doesn't matter how you were reading it, doesn't matter how you were interpreting it. It was all just very vague, wishy-washy type. Open the book, read it, and it's living water, and whatever you need, you will get out of it. Okay? Well, if I open a book and I have something weighing on my conscience about, I don't know, I did something wrong that I feel is wrong, and I open the book and it talks about, a donkey talking in, I think it's Numbers or something. Doesn't really apply. I don't get how that makes sense to me. And then I was told, just pray about it. Okay, well, I'm praying, but I don't really know how to pray or what to pray or anything like that. So is this just me talking or whatever, right? Had a lot of confusion, a lot of misinformation, right? So I go through, I'm influenced this way, and it's very not sufficient. It doesn't satisfy me. So at this point, I have basically pushed Christianity away, and I am already graduated from high school, and I am in my current occupation, and I'm alone, right? I'm alone in North Carolina for about a year. I had married my wife, and she was back home doing college, and I was alone. What would I do other than seek truth, or what I thought truth was, right, in my young 18, 19-year-old mind, right? Okay, well, I'm going to Google everything. I'm going to start as close to this Protestant faith as I can and move on, right? And to me, being ignorant, everything Christianity, well, that's one religion. And, I'm going to study Islam. I'm going to study Judaism. And then I'm going to branch out from there. So what did I do? I studied all of them and came to, since they're all similar, since all the Abrahamic faiths are similar, I basically came to the same conclusion. There's no real proof that I can agree with, right? Because there's no real proof for God at this time. There's no way to prove it. So what feels right? Well, all of these are basically the same, so I'm going to throw all of them out. They're all wrong because of all the wrong things that I've read in their holy books. So I switched to paganism, and which is umbrella term for everything that isn't, Abrahamic. Switch to that. I go through Hinduism, Buddhism, everything you can think of, all the way up to neo-paganism, a remaking of old pagan tribal traditions and this and the other. Look into Wicca, all these different things to see what fits, right? Well, being this angsty, teenaged individual, I'm like, okay, well, what feels right? Well, Google says that, this Wicca thing it puts the power in your hands, right? And you can do all good things. And you basically are able to explore whatever you want, right? And I read a book. It was called, I think it was called Nocturnal Witchcraft. And it was by some dude who makes a lot of really cringy, weird books, right? That you can tell are just, it's more shock value than anything, rereading it, right? But at the time, I was like, okay, cool. This gives me the ability to control my own destiny. I have priorities in my life that I want to focus on, and I can either do good with this or bad with this. And morally, doing good is good, right? So I pursue that. I pursue it in the form of reading books and just kind of reading blogs and things like that, and watching videos on it to see what people did and how it was. Well, it turns out it's just a bunch of fluffy, feel-good crap. The same thing I was running away from in the Protestant feel-good churches, right? hey, we're not really going to dive down and do anything. We're just going to make you feel good, and feeling good is a way of us telling you that you're doing the right thing. So Wicca or whatever kind of fail out because I didn't agree with all of the traditional Wicca stuff that people try to say is like ancient. It just got really weird, like a lot of weird stuff that I can make a whole nother video about that, but it was a bunch of weird, inappropriate things that I didn't really care to partake in. So I kind of shifted away from that, and then I got into my history. Like, where's my bloodline? What were the religions of my ancestors, right? Pursued that a little bit and got into not Odinism, because Odinism is associated with like neo-Nazis and things like that, but just the overarching Viking theme. And oddly enough, got really it's almost like the world shifted into that when I got into it. So it may have just been a world thing that being pushed. Either way, dug into that, kind of liked it. I felt like it was supposed to be that because of my heritage and where I'm from and all those things. So I tried to pursue it. I liked it because it gave me an idea of like, okay, a man is supposed to be this way, a wife is typically this way, but there are definite goals. There's a defined box that I could fit in, and this seems right. The gods are generally good. They don't kill a lot of people, and it preaches independence of oneself. Okay. So I follow that for a time. I try to pray to these gods. Nothing. It's just like you call someone and there's nothing really on the other end. And I really try to genuinely reach out to these entities, right? These other gods, in the hopes that I would feel something, that I would be drawn to it and actually like, yeah, this is right. I have had an experience that lets me know that this is right, and I feel right because it's morally right. Okay? Nothing. The line is dead. I do this for many years and basically just wear that mask of heathenism. I try to read books. I try to pursue it and make myself feel like that, and it just becomes part of my identity. Like, hey, that's who I am. Like I'll wear my little stupid Thor's hammer thing, and like that's me. That's my gods, right? Ultimately, that fire pittered out. I tried to make it last, tried to stoke the flames, tried to keep going, but there was nothing there. There's no substance, and sadly, it shifted. I slowly just became an agnostic. Didn't really subscribe to that faith or that theme of faith anymore, or that religion. Slowly became an agnostic, and just kind of almost like an agnostic atheist type. I'm not going to say anything because I don't know what's true. And after that, I got into like almost my own religion, almost my own creation of like what everything is, because I got deep into like philosophy and just doing what I felt was right, because I had no other thing that I was drawn to, right? So I got into like consciousness and like, what is consciousness? What is the universe? I think there is some sort of deity, but I don't know how to prove it. And what if there's just some like source? And this I drew from that Nocturnal Witchcraft book from back in the day, right? And this really stuck with me. What if there's a source? And all religions are kind of right, and they're just drawing from that one source and just interpreting that one source of deity in a different way. And for the longest time, that felt right. It just like, yeah, that's the best explanation I can do, or I can provide. And, it may not be right, but it feels right. And I just kind of stuck with that, not really questioning, not really answering. The whole time, my wife has been born and raised Catholic. Never went through full confirmation or anything, but that was her belief. She believed in Jesus. She didn't have a deep wealth of knowledge, and when she married me, that just kind of got put aside because it was awkward, because I wasn't Christian. I wasn't even Christian at the time, so it just kind of got put aside. But this whole time, she's been watching me go through these transitions and just kind of along for the ride. And, it's kind of, I guess it's one of my regrets. I wouldn't be where I am now if it weren't for that, but it's like I put it through the ringer and I feel bad about it. But yeah, that was my religion or belief for the longest time. There was just some main source that we all kind of connected to, and maybe when we die, our spirits just are reabsorbed into that source. Very karmic, or what's the word? Where you're born again, the word escapes me now. But very, very like our souls are just recycled, and that's kind of just where I left it, right? So yeah, and I stayed that way up until 7-ish months ago. I forget the exact date. But yeah, that's my background. And just to rehash everything, raised Protestant Christian, angsty teen, had questions that couldn't be answered, explored every other religion that I could think of, from, common Hinduism, Buddhist stuff to neo-pagan fringe religions, right? To try and find something that resonated with me. Ended up being an agnostic atheist with a belief in some sort of deity that we're all connected to. And that lasted until I got cancer. Yeah. So that is where I'll end this video. If you want to continue hearing my story and following me, if you want me to make another video about specifically the different religions I studied, I can do that. Whatever really helps you. Again, I'll reiterate this. I'm making this as a vlog for me to look back on to see, where I was now in 10 years or so, but also to help anyone who sees it to find God. Maybe they'll relate to a story they hear from me, or maybe not. Maybe they just pass by it and think it's interesting or whatever. Regardless, like, share, maybe someone else. I mean, you don't have to like it. Subscribe if you want to hear more, and follow me on this path. Share it in the hopes that someone else will see it and be drawn to the Lord as well. So yeah, thank you. Again, my name's Ty Crump, and this is my path to God.